Like, hey, congratulations. You're on video. Nice to see you. First time experiencing Frank on video, you know? It's an experience.
I like Mario. It's a little laggy.
Right, 2 minutes.
It'll be all right.
It's a little laggy. No, you're fine. You look good.
No, the video's laggy on my recording. On my side.
No, it's lagging on our end too.
Yeah, it's a little laggy. I think
you good. It's not 1995 webcam. It's a little bit better than that.
As long as they can hear me, that's all I care about.
You know.
Can you guys hear me?
And yeah, we can hear you, Frank. You're recording this as well?
Yeah, I'm putting it on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's start. Go ahead, the demon. Start us off.
Okay, so hey everybody. Thanks for joining. Tonight we've got Frank and Strong Atheists. They're going to be debating the subject of consciousness. That is specifically, is consciousness fundamental to the universe? So the way we're going to do this is Frank and Strong are both going to give 5 minutes. 5 minutes overviews of their arguments about whether consciousness is fundamental to the universe. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Frank first. Frank, if you just quickly give us a little bit about yourself, and then you can go ahead and dive in.
Hey guys, I'm 31. I've been talking online for about 4 years now. Ever since COVID happened, I got online. And I'm trying to get my major in psychology right now. I'm trying to get my bachelor's degree. And basically, I believe consciousness is fundamental for a couple of reasons, which we'll go into. And I used to be an atheist. I'm not anymore. I'm a pantheist. Basically, that's it. So.
Thank you, Frank. Strong, go ahead.
Oh, sure. How you doing? So, yeah, I'm 59. I have a mattress store. I like to debate theists. Kind of a hobby. So this is of interest to me, especially now that Frank's no longer an atheist. So really like to hear his argument. And I look forward to showing my position that consciousness is not fundamental to the universe.
Fantastic. All right, Frank, take it away. 5 minutes on the clock.
All right, guys. Welcome everyone to this debate. Now, today we're debating whether consciousness is fundamental or not. And I am taking the affirmative and saying consciousness is probably fundamental. Now, this is theoretical. I suppose you can always see it from a different perspective, but I'm going to try my best to lay out why I believe consciousness is fundamental and see where it takes us. Now, the reason I believe consciousness is fundamental to the universe are 3 reasons. 1, what causes motion in the universe? My opponent today will have to answer this question, and he can't just appeal to matter, because there must be a reason that the universe is in a state of motion, and matter's nature has no explanatory power. Everything in the universe has a cause, and if my interlocutor agrees, then there must be a sufficient cause for this phenomena. Second is, what causes the grounding for material states? Again, appealing to matter here would cause a tautology, and it has no explanatory power as well. Third is, what demarcates the limits of consciousness? We see the result of consciousness in our everyday lives, right down to subatomic particles. Even bacteria has a form of consciousness. My opponent will have to draw a distinction between what is conscious and what is not conscious, and I think that this distinction is illusory at best. Also, I looked up white holes, and they are hypothetical, so I think that consciousness can better explain what is fundamental than white holes, in my opinion. But yeah, we can get into that as well. So that's basically my opening.
All right, thanks, Frank. All right, Strong, your rebuttal, 3 claims.
Okay, so certainly. So I just did want to not only rebut that, but I wanted to mention about like the definition of fundamental is forming a necessary base or core of central importance. I personally think that you would have to show why consciousness would meet that criteria. Furthermore, every definition of consciousness that I see has awareness in it. And so I'd be very skeptical that you'd be able to show inanimate objects as being aware. So I would put that challenge to you. As far as motion goes, I don't understand why you wouldn't accept that motion is a product of, the natural laws of physics. Everything's in motion. There's really nothing that's not in motion. Everything can be accounted for through naturalism. Nothing can be accountable from supernaturalism. You asked about, and also consciousness. I can't see how you could account for motion through consciousness. Grounding you were speaking of. I would really challenge you to show where consciousness could ground anything whatsoever, except for our perspective of beings that we absolutely know are conscious. But beings that are not conscious, I can't see where grounding would come into play. You're speaking of the limits of consciousness. I think the limits of consciousness would have to do with beings, meeting the criteria of awareness. And I'm convinced that you can't do that with inanimate objects. And to finish up, I believe that the burden of proof would be on you, that things not being conscious would be the default position. I also think that things not being conscious would be more parsimonious, more simple than things being conscious, and not in need of as great of an explanation. And so I think based on this criteria, that the burden of proof would be on you.
Freestyle. Go ahead, Frank.
All right, so this is open conversation, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So strong. So basically my contention was that there needs to be something that can explain motion in the universe. And motion can't be explained by matter in and of itself, because it has no explanatory power. It can't matter can't just be in a state of motion. There has to be something that causes the motion. If you believe in the basic law of cause and effect, there must be a cause for why the universe is in a state of motion. Would you agree?
So yes, first off, I do believe in cause and effect. However, I am not convinced of a first cause necessarily, because I am more leaning towards that everything is cyclical, personally.
Okay.
And also, even though matter may not directly account for movement, which I'm not convinced, but that's what you're stating. I think that, inside matter you have electrons, which are constantly moving. But energy would certainly meet the criteria of being able to account for movement. And energy and matter are interchangeable. Energy can become matter, and matter can become energy.
Right.
So we can account that way.
Strong. But that's basically what I'm saying. I am asking you the question of what causes these electrons to be in a constant state of motion. What is causing that phenomena? Because I don't see. Basically, when I became an atheist, I started to try to understand my own perception into why I was an atheist. And basically, I did not agree with the Christian God, right? But I did agree with a lot of what the theists were saying, in the sense of that there has to be some sort of explanation to why things are the way that they are. And saying matter is just this way isn't a good explanation as to why why matter works in a certain way. So just saying matter has this function doesn't explain why it has that function, if that makes sense.
Okay, sure. So the laws of physics are what makes these things occur, you know, in play with the energy slash mass. So it's a combination of laws of physics and energy slash mass. And I'm sure, you know, physicists and certain scientists might be able to give you a better explanation than I could. But let's assume we don't have an explanation for these things. Does that mean you can put, you know, a God of the gaps argument there, or a consciousness of the gaps to explain these things if we don't have an answer?
Okay, so let me give you my perspective. I believe that I'm a dualist, so I believe that consciousness and energy are fundamental. So I believe that energy was in a state of awareness, a lot like everything in the universe is in a state of awareness, because there has to be a reason why not only is it in motion, but also it has a grounding for why it is in the state that it's in, if that makes sense. Like why, and that was my second question I was going to ask you, why is matter in a state of in the form that it is currently in? What keeps it in that form? So I tried to reconcile this with my atheism, and I couldn't come up with a cogent answer. So that's why I came up with the fact that maybe there was something else going on, and basically that's why I came up with the fact that maybe a lot similar to like the cogito ergo sum, where it says I think therefore I am, and this knowledge of or awareness existed before anything else existed, you know, except besides matter or energy. And I feel like that's what's causing this, not only this motion, but also why it keeps matter in a concrete form. And so basically that's something you would have to answer, is why is it in motion, and why does it keep its concrete form?
Okay, I mean, I think I answered this. It has to do with, you know...
And you can't, but sorry, all you said was it was physics. And
laws of physics,
yeah, but
combined with the interaction between the energy slash mass. But even if I couldn't explain this, it doesn't get you to where you want to be. Why would you think that would enable you to be able to fit consciousness into the gap, even if there is a gap?
Because consciousness is immaterial, and consciousness, or not is it? Well, I'll say it can be immaterial, and it also has explanatory power, because it's something that's beyond the physics, beyond just nature and matter and motion.
Certainly. So I'm sure you're aware we don't know that consciousness is immaterial. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm certainly a physicalist and a materialist, and don't believe for a second that consciousness is immaterial. And so I would ask for evidence that consciousness is immaterial to begin with. I would also ask you to try to explain, you know, the interaction problem, that how could something that's immaterial interact with something that's material?
Okay, so your first question is why is consciousness immaterial? Was that your first question?
Yeah. Well, what evidence would you have for that?
Yeah, basically because there's no limit to consciousness. There's no limitation to how far our consciousness can go. We can literally create endless amount of abstract objects with our immaterial minds, and we can't seem to do this in a physical world. So because of the fact that we have this imagination, the fact that we have the ability to create abstract objects that make sense in the physical world, I would say that's the reason why it's almost certainly immaterial. What was your second question, Strong?
Well, I'm not sure you addressed that properly, but if you want to go to the second question, or would you want me to just rebut that a little bit?
Well, let me get to the second question, and you can rebut both.
Okay. How can you account for the interaction problem? How something immaterial could interact with something material?
Okay. Well, basically, if these two ideas are linked, the fact that matter and energy and consciousness are linked together for eternity past, then there would be no interaction problem, because just to say in the same way that our brains interact with itself in order to create the consciousness that we have. Because like I said before, I believe like there are two different types of consciousness. There's the fundamental, and then there's the consciousness that humans have. So because our brains have the ability to create this consciousness, I believe in the same way physical matter has the ability to create this consciousness that interacts with it just fine, just as much as our brain interacts with the physical world.
Okay, so you put an if in that sentence. If consciousness and energy are, I forget the word you used, connected, or I'm paraphrasing possibly there. But how could you show that to be the case? I understand that consciousness will require energy, but energy wouldn't require consciousness, in my opinion.
Before you respond, Frank, just two things. First of all, with respect to energy, I heard you both, it seems that you both agree when physics says energy is the capacity to do work. Secondly, somebody in the audience said, Frank, how do you come to the conclusion that consciousness is fundamental? Can you walk us from the bottom to the top?
Okay, yeah, I could definitely do that. That's fine. But first, before I get to that, what's your response, Strong? So, like, because I gave you two rebuttals, and I don't know if you addressed them. So let Strong address that, and then I'll address everything else.
So I thought I started doing that.
Yeah. I just want to make sure you had enough time to, like, yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm not sure of the connection that you're giving consciousness to energy. Like I was mentioning that energy, I don't see as needs, requires, or even has consciousness, except when it occurs in a being that has this capacity. Whereas, a being that has this capacity, then energy would be required for consciousness. Even in beings that are conscious, such as ourselves, we also have states of being unconscious and even non-conscious. When we're put out for like an operation and things like that, we actually become non-conscious. So even conscious beings can be in a state of non-consciousness. So I'm not sure how you could get to the fundamental phase of everything being of consciousness being fundamental to everything.
Okay, so basically the question was, walk us back as to how you came up with the fact that consciousness is fundamental. Basically, I wanted to answer three questions, which Strong still has yet to answer, and I don't think he will be able to answer it, which is, what causes motion in the universe, number one, and how does it cause motion? Number two, what causes the grounding of the conscious states the physical states that matter is in, what causes the grounding for that? And the third one is, what demarcates between what is conscious and what is not conscious, which is the third question that Strong has yet to answer. I wanted to know what demarcates the difference between consciousness and non-conscious. How do you come up with that distinction? And because to me, it's just illusory. I don't see a distinction between what is conscious and what is not conscious. Everything in the world has movement. Everything in the world seems to be in motion, which means it's alive to a certain degree, aware. It has some sort of like there, if that makes sense. And I want to know what causes these things. If not, matter itself can't answer the question, because matter doesn't have explanatory power. It is limited to what it is, which is just matter. So there needs to be something extra, which is basically why I got consciousness, which is why I think it's fundamental. Go ahead.
All right, so if you want to get a little bit technical here, though, you have the answer being forces. Okay, you have your different forces. I think there's at least four forces that can account for these things. That's what they call them, the four forces. That's your answer. But again, getting back to what we were saying earlier, even if we couldn't answer this, it doesn't get you to where you want to be.
Okay. But again, I still don't understand. I mean, there has to be a reason why things are in motion, right, Strong?
forces. I mean, I just gave you the
Right,
answer.
but forces,
It's the interaction between physics and the energy / mass. It has to do with forces.
Right, but I am asking what causes the forces. What is causing it?
So my belief is that the universe is cyclical. So, I mean, the laws of physics, or what represents the laws of physics, always existed. The energy always existed. The energy can be converted to mass and mass to energy. All cyclical. No explanation required.
Okay, so the universe is cyclical. That I can work with something like that. All right. So what your explanation of the universe being cyclical is that energy goes into black holes and it comes out through the other end through a white hole. Am I correct?
So that's just a hypothesis. Science gets us back to Planck length time after the expansion of the Big Bang started. Before that, we don't know. That's just a hypothesis that's gaining popularity that I do stand behind at this point. That is the best hypothesis that I've heard. And I like to mention that it's not just the universe being cyclical, but what's referred to as the cosmos, which would be the universe and anything outside the universe.
Okay, Strong. So what is your... Okay, so I don't mean to shift the burden of proof. And please don't think I'm doing it. But I just wanted to ask, what is your explanation as to why the universe is cyclical?
I think it's easier to explain it being cyclical than a first cause. Having a first cause really brings up a lot of hard questions of what went on before that first cause. What would be the mechanism for the first cause occurring? Why would it start then? How would it start then? It brings up way more questions than things being cyclical.
Okay, but we have... Basically, there's two competing models. We have one where you say the universe is cyclical, meaning it's expanding and eventually it'll become like a crunch, right? Is that what you're saying, like a big crunch, and then it'll expand again?
No, not a fan of the Big Crunch. The Big Crunch has lost most of its popularity when somewhat recently, relatively recently, the science shows that the universe is accelerating in its expansion. So that pretty much negates most of the appeal of the Big Crunch. I think it's more cyclical, having to do with black holes.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, so you believe that it's cyclical, but the way that most physicists understand that the universe works is that it'll eventually end at a heat death. So what do you think about the heat death?
Sure, and once again, what I'm speaking of is generally referred to as the cosmos, which is the universe and everything outside the universe that could possibly be there. Because you just said universe again, so I'm not just talking about the universe.
Cosmos, that's fine.
Yes. So it's not the heat death part that would be cyclical, because I believe that will occur, that, everything will expand far enough away from everything else and no longer be relevant to anything else. And everything will cool down. And but I'm speaking of the stuff specifically, the energy / mass that enters into black holes. I think that could create something cyclical, that would account for singularities. In fact, black holes are often referred to as singularities, which corresponds to the first singularity, that we know of, having to do with the initial expansion of the universe, the initial expansion of the singularity.
Okay, so you're basically positing that we came from a singularity, which I agree with. But you're saying that, black holes are the cause of this singularity. Am I correct on that?
I'm just hypothesizing. I'm not saying that's the case. So we don't know anything, before Planck length time after the expansion started. But if the singularity was where it was any earlier, I believe it would have had to have started expanding earlier. And so we would have to account for it not being there earlier, so it had to get there somehow. And you'd also have to account for the density, and a black hole could account for that, for why it's there. A black hole and a white hole could account. And for those that don't know, a white hole is the opposite of a black hole, so it'd be things coming out of it instead of going into it, and they would sound like they would come out, condensed, very dense, And these things are the best hypothesis that I've heard to account for the initial singularity. Like when things enter a black hole, they seem to condense, or I would call it recondense, and they could start other big bangs or little bangs elsewhere.
Okay.
Again, this is hypotheses, you know.
Right,
it's not,
right. Which is okay because mine is a hypothesis as well. So we're in the same boat.
Can we go back to one of your questions, Frank, about what delimits what's the demark to consciousness?
That's okay. Let me get back to where I was going to get at before. So basically, we have two competing models. We have one that says matter is singularly fundamental, right? And then we have a model that's mine that says consciousness and matter are fundamental. Now, one of these has explanatory power. You understand that there is a reason why we need consciousness. We need some sort of driver that drives things forward, like the unmoving mover. It's a Spinoza's God. We need something that drives things forward. And that's basically where I come up with consciousness. So his model, there's nothing conscious that drives things forward. So matter is in a state of constant flux, but we have there's no explanatory power. There's no reason to believe in it because if we're positing these two hypothetical models, we know consciousness exists. We know what consciousness can do. It drives things forward. It creates. It allows things to become something more than what it is originally because we build on what we think of. And so consciousness can do work, same way that energy can do work. And if you think of it the way that Strong thinks of it, it's just matter existing in a state of flux. So basically that's our two competing models. Matter without a purpose, matter without a reason to do anything, or basically what I would say static energy, static matter. Or matter that has some sort of explanatory power as to why it does something, why it can have the ability to do work. That's basically the two competing models.
So I would say matter / energy. These things are interchangeable. Nothing is static. I don't know why you would say that. I think that the big problem we're running into here is that you're trying to explain things with something that's more complex than what you're trying to explain, okay? So you can't account for this consciousness that you consider to be the answer to everything without special pleading, okay? And tell me if you can, because I'd love to be proven wrong. But consciousness is harder to explain than the universe. And yes, consciousness exists now, we know of this. But as far as we know, it took billions of years for it to occur.
Okay, so we know consciousness exists, and we know that it can drive things forward. Am I correct?
We know that it exists now. We don't know about the deep past.
No, Strong, I'm asking a question. I'm asking, can consciousness drive things forward? Is there if you have consciousness, do we have a purpose for why we, or not a purpose, but a reason why we do the things we do? Is there a reason behind it?
Sure. I think it has to do mostly with evolution, that we have this consciousness to survive. It's a survival mechanism.
So think of it like this, in awareness. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, bro.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so basically think of it like this. There's matter, right? And then there's something extra that drives it forward, that allows it to become something more than what it was originally. Because it has self-awareness. It is aware of what it is, which is energy. So it has the ability to do something that it wouldn't originally do, which is to do work, which is what energy does. So it explains the reason why that energy is in motion. It gives an explanation, as where basically you're saying matter is in a constant state of motion, but we don't know why. Matter exists in a certain state, but we don't know why. And again, my question, which Demon Victoria brought up, was what demarcates the difference between what is conscious and what is not conscious? Because you can say an amoeba is conscious. You can say we're conscious. You can say certain animals are conscious, or most animals are conscious. You can even say trees are conscious because they have the ability to grow and produce and reproduce. So basically, what I'm asking is, what demarcates the difference between what is conscious and what is not conscious, and how is that demarcation not just illusory?
So, as far as I understand it to be the case, that every definition I've looked up about consciousness has to do with awareness. I'm not convinced that a tree is conscious. I'm certainly not convinced that a rock is conscious, as you are. I don't think these things meet that criteria. I do say there are different levels of consciousness, so different animals, insects, things, that are alive would certainly have different levels of consciousness, from, the most complex to the most simple. But things that are not like having anything close to a brain, I'm not convinced would be consciousness. I mean, the criteria would be awareness, as far as I understand, of your surroundings.
Awareness. Yeah, awareness.
So, Strong, I've got to interrupt. There's some confusion in the audience, and I'd like to read out a comment that I think is echoing the audience. It's unfortunate for the audience not to know how the debaters reach their conclusions from the start of the debate. If again, they're imploring that you guys describe your positions from the bottom to the top.
Okay, I can do it one more time, and I will, and hopefully
because you put three claims, three arguments to Strong, but I think we need to take it a step back and say, what do we mean by the question at hand?
Okay, so basically, I'm putting out three contentions here, okay? And these three contentions led me to believing that consciousness was fundamental. And basically, these are the three contentions. One, what causes motion in the universe? That's the first one. And I want to know what causes it, and I want to know what Strong thinks about that. And up to this point, and I'm not trying to be mean, but he hasn't been able to answer that question. And he says forces, but doesn't explain what those forces are. Number two, what causes the state of matter being in the state that... what causes matter to be in the state that it's in currently? So what causes matter to be the way that it is? To be... How does the rock have its rockiness, or its tree have its treeness? That's basically my second question. And my third question was, what demarcates the difference between what is conscious and what is not conscious? What Strong said, there are certain things that are conscious, certain things that are not conscious, but he's not explaining how he knows why those certain things are conscious and why other things are not conscious. And that's basically the three reasons why I believe consciousness is fundamental. And I used to be an atheist, so... And this is, again, theoretical, but this is basically why I changed my stance to pantheism.
What is consciousness, Frank, in your definition? We heard Strong Atheist say, from all the definitions he's come across, it at least includes one description, that is awareness. What is it? How can you describe it for the audience?
Give me 1 sec, guys. Scotty's messaging me. Give me 1 sec. All right. So basically, the question was, what do I define consciousness as?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, an awareness. I would compare it to the cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Except I separate knowledge and the ability to think into two different categories. So I wouldn't say that it's a mind. I would just say it's awareness. Same thing as an amoeba that has awareness of its surroundings. It doesn't think. It feels, but it doesn't think. It doesn't have processing. It doesn't have processing power. It simply knows its surroundings. So it's a lot like a chemical reaction, or a or just like awareness, basically. So does that explain it?
Strong, do you agree with what he said, or do you differ?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I see that the definitions have in common are awareness. I mean, he's putting thinking in there, which I think increases his burden of proof tremendously. Especially, I mean, he's saying that trees have awareness. I'm not convinced that trees think. I mean, again, I'm certainly not convinced
Strong, I'm sorry to cut you off, but what I mean, I'm not saying trees think. I'm saying trees have awareness. I separate knowledge and thoughts. So when I say they have awareness, I'm saying they have knowledge of themselves and their surroundings. But I separate thoughts and knowledge. So I don't take the standard definition of justified true belief to be knowledge. I don't take that stance. I take
how
Yeah, go for it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Basically, when I say knowledge, I'm saying awareness of your surroundings, awareness of yourself, and awareness of facts, information, knowledge is defined in that sense. Not in the sense of thoughts or a process.
And you think trees have these attributes?
Yes, I think trees are aware. They have awareness. They have knowledge of themselves and of their surroundings, and because of that knowledge, it allows them to do work, to basically be energy in motion.
So how can they have knowledge without a brain? How can they think? Like you're talking about.
No, they don't. They don't think. No, they don't think strong.
They don't.
No, they don't think.
So how do they? Are you? So they don't have knowledge.
They have knowledge, but their knowledge is awareness. Not in this, I don't define knowledge as a justified true belief. I define knowledge as awareness. Simple awareness.
Sure. Okay. Yes. And in the audience, they're asking if you think that rocks have awareness. I did ask this earlier because I already knew his answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think rocks have awareness. But then again, I think everything has awareness because that's what grounds its form. The reason why it exists in the way it exists is because there is this awareness. If that makes sense.
Sure. For you to say that. So a rock has awareness. A rock does not have thoughts, right? Because a tree doesn't, so a rock can't have thoughts.
Correct.
And so where would the awareness in the rock occur?
It is a basic fact of matter. Matter itself has the ability to have this awareness. It's something that existed within matter forever, for all, like eternity past. It had this awareness. This ability to do something, this ability to do work, which is what energy is.
How do you know that?
How do I know that?
Yeah. How do you know that matter had always had awareness?
I don't know it strong. It's theoretical, but I will say that there has to be a reason why things are in motion. There has to be a reason why things are concrete, and I don't see a demarcation point between what is conscious and what is not conscious, which is something you have yet to answer in this entire debate.
Oh my gosh, I've answered you this several times. I'll answer it again. We have the four fundamental forces, of nature that can account for all these things. We have electromagnetism, we have the weak interaction, the strong interaction, and we have gravity. Okay, these are the forces that can account for these things. We have the laws of physics, and these interact with the energy/mass. All this stuff can be accounted for. In fact, they account for everything to Planck length time after the expansion started. Before that, we don't know. But we can account for all of these things. We understand the movement. We understand where it all comes from, the Big Bang. I think you might have just some incredulity on why you think that we can't understand these things, and it could only be consciousness. But consciousness is more complex than non-consciousness. Would you agree?
No, I would not agree.
No?
No, I think consciousness is fundamental. So I would say that it's probably the simplest thing in the universe besides matter. So I would say consciousness is what drives things forward, and matter is basically what we're made of. So you combine both those things, and you have everything that exists in the universe.
So, I mean, I don't know why you think that this empty assertion gets you to where you want to be, because you have nothing backing it up other than this is what you call theoretical. I would say more hypothetical, but
Hypothetically, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure that this gets you to your burden of proof. And the default position is that everything is not conscious. Everything that we see is mostly not conscious. There's.
But strong again.
Yeah.
You said the four strong forces and then you said the laws of physics. But again,
Or fundamental. One was the strong force. They're called the four fundamental forces.
Four fundamental forces, right? And then you said the laws of physics as well, right?
The laws of physics combined with the energy / mass. The properties of energy / mass.
Okay,
and this is what accounts for all these things.
And I'm asking, what causes that?
So, again, science gets us back to Planck length time after the expansion started. So everything was dense. Then it started expanding. So this is, the counter to gravity is it's expanding. Okay.
By the way, just 2 minutes to Q&A. I'll leave that up to you guys. Go ahead. Keep going.
We also have relative new things to account for these things. It's like dark matter and dark energy. So we have these to add, all the explanations.
Yeah, that's fine. You can add as many variables as you want in it. What I'm asking is what causes these things. What causes them to exist in the way they exist, Strong? You can't just say nature is a certain way. You have to have explanatory power. Sure.
Well, you did hear the part where I said that it's my position that these things are cyclical.
Right, and that's fine. And if you think they're cyclical, that's fine. But you also have a burden of proof now to prove that it's cyclical. So that's something you would have to provide at this point.
So, no, I don't really have that burden of proof because I'm not stating definitively that that's the case. That's just my opinion that that's the case. The burden of proof still remains on you to show that things are conscious. I won't even go along with a tree being conscious, let alone a rock. I think you need to have some awareness of your environment that a tree doesn't have, that a rock doesn't have.
So basically, this is my final question before we can go into Q&A or whatever. Basically, what I want to know is what demarcates the difference between what is conscious and what is not conscious. How do you demarcate the difference?
Once again, awareness.
Awareness demarcates the difference?
Yeah, like every definition that I see on consciousness has to do with things being aware. So awareness is the main criteria.
But I say everything is aware, though, Strong.
I know you say that, but you can't show that to be the case. In fact, it seems like that's not the case due to things not being aware. What awareness does a rock have of its environment?
The rock is aware of itself. It's aware of that.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
How do I know that? Because it wouldn't exist any other way. If matter can't ground itself. It can't be the grounding of itself, can it?
Oh, of course it can. Energy would ground it at least. My personal opinion is energy accounts for everything, including matter. But how would you think that a rock is aware? I just can't understand how you could think that.
Well, again, I like I said before, it has a grounding, so.
You said rock is aware of itself.
Yes.
How do you know that?
A rock.
How do you know?
A rock understands that it's a rock, so it continues being a rock. Does that make sense?
No. How can it understand anything?
Because it's matter.
So
it has awareness because it's made up of matter. Matter and awareness are interchangeable. They go together hand in hand.
Okay, but awareness doesn't come into play.
How do you know
billions of years.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, there's no evidence of it. Let's put it that way. There's no evidence of consciousness until billions of years after the expansion of the Big Bang started.
But you haven't been able to answer any of the questions that I posited. I posited 3 simple questions. You haven't been able to answer any of them.
Which one do you think I didn't answer? Because I answered them all, Frank. You keep saying I didn't. But even if I couldn't, which I did, it still doesn't get you to where you want to be. You think you have these gotcha questions, But all you have is incredulity. All you have is what's essentially a God of the gaps argument for consciousness, a consciousness of the gaps argument. So even if I couldn't answer these questions, which I answered numerous times, I don't know why you think I didn't, but even if I couldn't, doesn't get you to where you want to be, once again.
All right, guys, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to question from the audience.
Yeah, let's go into Q&A.
How does having contentions with a particular theory lead you to conclude your theory is the correct one? Shouldn't the contentions just eliminate that one theory? Don't you still need a process by which you can come up to your particular theory out of the probably infinite theories that exist? What is quote unquote, that process used from step one to the conclusion? This is for Frank.
Basically, this is a hypothetical theory that I came up with that I think works, but I could be wrong. And basically, it's my own incredulity, like Strong says, and I believe that because I am incredulous towards matter being a sufficient answer to the question of certain things that I have that I've questioned before, I've come up with this theoretical model of what can cause things to like go into motion and what can ground things and things like that. So, so that's basically why I believe what I believe. But I'm not here to push this upon anyone or anything, and I don't think that the model is perfect. I'm not saying that this is like this is gonna like win a Nobel Prize or anything, but I find it interesting to like to debate the topic because I do feel like there's something extra that we have that humans, not only humans have, but like the physical world has, that causes things to be a certain way. If that makes sense.
You mean the universe, right?
Yeah,
Not
the
just
universe.
The world.
Yeah, cosmos, whatever. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they also asked about, eliminating one theory over the other. So I guess you could say process of elimination.
Yeah,
Couldn't the contentions just eliminate that one theory?
If there was a theory that would make sense to me that was just purely physical, and I know there are some out there, like Strong has said, there are some, but but they're just not conclusive enough for me. So basically, like I would say, I don't think those models are very good at explaining the things that I have a problem with. So that's why I would choose the one that I've chosen. But again, I could be wrong. So I'm not the guru, guys. So yeah.
How does your incredulity? Thank you. I show you theory to be true. I'm tired as usual.
What was the question, Victoria?
How does your incredulity? Oh my God, I can't talk. How does that? Thank you. Show your theory to be true.
Well, I don't think it shows a theory to be true, but I do think that consciousness is something that we know exists, and it's something that drives us forward not only in our daily lives, but in the lives of animals as well, and it causes us to continue to create things that we haven't created as like in the moment. So it's a force that has explanatory power. So in that sense, that's the reason why I believe it. Again, I'm not pushing this upon anyone. Anyone can believe what they want to believe, but yeah, basically that's why I have that theory. So.
Frank, but is your model good at explaining those things?
I think it does, because I think there's a reason. There has to be a reason behind certain things, guys. Like there has to be a reason why physical matter is why it behaves in the way that it does. And I don't think we can just say it's just its nature, because I don't think that has explanatory power. So basically, that's why I posit something extra.
Okay.
And again, I just want to say thanks.
Philosophy is a fun exercise. I like it. I'm sorry.
Before we leave, I just want to say thanks to Strong, because like I know that I could be kind of pushy, and I'm sorry if I got it on your nerves strong. But anyway, yeah, I
Oh no,
apologize.
you could never get on my nerves, Frank. You're one of the most mellow, nice people that I know, and you could never get on my nerves, even if you tried.
I appreciate that, Strong, and you're awesome for doing this. So thanks.
No, thank you.
Frank, how does consciousness answer your 3 questions?
Because okay, basically, if there's an awareness and there's some sort of like extra feature to the world that's immaterial, it can explain why things go into it, like things basically like my contention was motion, basically motion, grounding, and demarcation between what is conscious and not conscious. So I don't see a difference between what is conscious and not conscious, and I don't think there's a way to see the difference. Basically, that's what I believe. And so it has the ability to drive things forward, if that makes sense.
Well, Frank, what use is explanatory power without predictive power of evidence?
Well, I think there's enough evidence to conclude that consciousness does exist. So basically, if we posit that something that is matter can also be conscious as well, then I think that we should definitely dive into thinking about maybe like how that can explain things better. So
I want to remind the 2 of you, you both have said one thing in common, that consciousness has awareness as a component to the definition.
yeah, and basically another thing I wanted to get through to people was to show them the difference between awareness and thoughts, because like I don't think that what's fundamental is the mind, and I want to make sure people understand that. So this is something that's different from a mind. It's awareness, which is what things like amoebas have, and like trees and things like that. Like that's what I believe. So there's a difference between a mental realm and a conscious realm, and I want to make sure people, because I'm not an idealist and I don't have that that caveat of having to like defend mental like thinking thoughts, mental capacity, if that makes sense.
Sure. Strong, this is for you. Can you explain how you conclude that consciousness is caused by naturalism?
So I'm really saying that that's what the evidence shows. From what we understand, consciousness is an attribute only on the earth so far, though I'm not convinced that's the case. Mathematically, it has to exist elsewhere. However, that's all the evidence shows, is that it exists on this planet. And we can account for this through evolution, that it was evolved to be a survival mechanism to allow us a better chance to survive, which it certainly did. So it can be accounted for. Now, what we don't have evidence for is that consciousness existed for eternity. We don't have any evidence that consciousness existed or could have existed at the time that the singularity started expanding. We don't have any evidence that even matter existed until 200,000 to 400,000 years after the expansion started, cooled off enough for mass to start forming. Where would someone put consciousness in these circumstances? I don't think it could be the case. To say that energy is conscious would need some kind of explanation to show that to be the case, some kind of real evidence that would be the case, not just an empty assertion that that's the case. So basically what we have is, that's what the evidence shows. Consciousness took billions of years to form naturally and didn't exist before that, unless some aliens could have possibly existed before that we don't know of. But I still would tend to guess it would take billions of years or somewhere along those lines.
Hey, Victoria, I wanted to tell the audience, if anyone wants to come up and ask a question, they can as well. Even though using the chat is better, I guess, because it gets through the questions a lot quicker. But yeah, if anyone wanted to come up and ask a question, they can. And I appreciate you modding this, by the way, Victoria.
Oh, no problem.
Yep, thank you.
A few people are typing.
It is cold outside.
Yeah, here too.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Like, I'm a fan of winter, but man, I can't wait till it gets hot again.
Yep, 20 degrees Fahrenheit here.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, going down to 14 tonight.
If a live human being with rational thought was put under surgery and his brain was punctured enough to wound his brain, would this fundamentally change this person provided this person did not die?
Yes, it would. I would say it would. Because their brain is what causes the consciousness, not anything else. So if their brain is punctured and they no longer have the same capacity that they did before, they could like do certain things, then yeah, it would probably be different. But anyway, what do you think, Sean?
Sure, yeah, and that gets back to what we were speaking of earlier, that there's different levels of consciousness. So I totally believe that a person even could have different levels of consciousness based on their, mental capacity.
Yeah, whoever says seems frank, what did he say, seems frank? Come at me, bro. I'm just playing. What did he say, Demon? I can't read the chat.
He's saying that it seems like Frank just has some big questions, and to move forward is a loaded phrase doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
I think that's another way of saying maybe you're in the minority on the opinion of consciousness, or whether it's fundamental to the
I don't mind
universe
being a
question.
minority. I'm already a minority, so let's go.
Hey,
I'm fine.
Nice try, buddy.
But in fairness to Frank, that would just be an ad populum fallacy. So it doesn't matter how many people believe something; it doesn't make it more or less true.
Yeah, but like I said before, guys, this is, if you guys want to give me some explanations that may satisfy my inquiries and may be able to answer some of the questions that I have that are kind of that led me to this conclusion, I would love to hear them. So don't be afraid to DM me or anything, and let's keep the conversation open, all right?
At the end of the day, props to anyone willing to lay bare their position for all to see and defend it. Afraid I just can't get on board with Frank's assessment of the world. Strong takes the win for the null hypothesis.
That's just your opinion, bro. No, I think I have some reworking to do. I think Strong asking me the question of how do I know that it is consciousness is a very important question to answer, because again, it might not be that way. So I have to really think about it and really assess how I can answer that question. So are you trying to talk?
That's more. I'm about to. Perhaps a more interesting question is how small would the change to their brain be until you would consider them still the same person?
Yeah, I was gonna come at this at a completely different angle. I was gonna go into asking about the hard problem of consciousness, which is something
I
that
think that'd be lovely.
Yeah, which is something that I don't know if it can be answered. So, what's your thoughts on that, Strong?
I'll invite you up, Deanna.
Sure, I'm of the opinion, which I know I share with some other folks, that there is no hard problem of consciousness. Even if there are some questions that are unanswered, consciousness is just a thing that was developed from evolution as a survival mechanism. I'm a physicalist and a materialist, and so when people say that like thoughts are immaterial, I question them like I did for you, having to explain that there's any evidence to that and how something material can interact with something immaterial. As far as I understand, thoughts are electrochemical reactions in the brain. That's my opinion. That accounts for it all.
Just 1 second.
Hello.
Go ahead, Blaine.
Guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Who wants to start us off?
I only got a few minutes. Bringing food back home. I think Strong Atheist, I think you need to tweak your evolution comment a little bit. I would say consciousness has evolved and it's been useful for survival, not that it was evolved for survival. Because it's been useful, it keeps propagating, but if it wasn't, it wouldn't. But I don't think it was evolved for survival. I think it was useful. It isn't detrimental so far, so it just keeps moving forward. It keeps propagating. As far as Frank, I think to kind of explain I don't think it was spicy what my comment is. It seems like you have big questions, or at least you have come up with what you think are big questions, and kind of everyone accuses you of incredulity, but you've kind of made up answers that you can't support, at least not yet. And then when you say move forward, you're loading all your questions. You're poisoning all your own questions by saying move forward as if there's some sort of teleology or intent, rather than it is what it is. And that is what it is is completely explanatorily powerful. It's not satisfying. It looks like you're looking for not actual answers, but satisfying answers. I hope that's fair.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That's what me and Strong were talking about the other day, and I told them, I said, well, they're not satisfactory in my opinion, but again, they might not be satisfactory. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. This is my first time on Discord talking as a longtime lurker. I think.
Well, welcome.
Thanks. I think, but you're kind of falling into the same trap that like theists do, where it's like you want that kind of feeling that kind of makes you feel warm, fuzzy, and special inside, versus what is actually the answer, and that's the problem. It's like move forward, meaning there's some sort of intent, when there probably isn't an intent. They're just outcomes, and that kind of like. Some people would accuse that of being nihilistic, but you kind of just got to embrace that this is what it is.
Okay.
Sorry, it doesn't make you feel good.
Hey, I totally understand. And again, this is more theoretical, so I totally understand where you're coming from. And hopefully, I didn't come off as as bad as theists, and in their.
It was painful. I'm sorry. That's why I jumped all the way from YouTube to Discord, because it was painful. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're on YouTube. Oh, okay, cool, man. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I was cringe, so I appreciate it.
I mean, at least you're honest about it. I would say pull a T-jump. Be like, this is because I think all matter is conscious. I should be able to do this with a rock that no one's ever done, but no one's ever been able to come up with before. Come up with a novel prediction.
Okay.
And
sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah.
All right, I gotta bring food home before my spouse yells at me. So keep at it, guys.
Kenneth.
Thanks, Kenneth. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
All right. Can y'all hear me fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. For both of you, I just have one question that I never got the answer to, at least not to my satisfaction. when talking about metaphysics, the nature of reality, the true nature of reality, right? The fundamental nature of reality, however you want to define it. How the fuck do you come to any conclusions about the metaphysics?
How do we come? Well, we can theorize. I think that's what, or come up with hypotheticals, which I think is what me and Strong have done. Because again, we're not redefining the wheel here. I'm pretty sure that both, things that me and Strong both believe have been thought of before. I don't think it's anything new. We're just trying to explain it the best way we possibly can. At least that's my point of view. I don't know what Strong thinks, but yeah.
Yeah, I go where the evidence leads me, and how evidence could comport with reality in the best way possible. And that's how I come to my conclusions, which are not, set in stone. I'm open to being challenged on them. But as far
Blank,
as
does that answer your question at all?
Kind of, yeah. Hold on. Frank, do you agree with what Strong just said about following the evidence?
I think that we have to follow the evidence. I believe in evolution. I believe in abiogenesis. I believe in the Big Bang. I believe in all these things. But I think it's okay for us to, hypothesize about, what what could be possible. So that's why I came up with my theory. So that's basically where I'm at.
Sure. If I'm understanding correctly, both of you think you're following the evidence, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I do.
And
Sure, I believe I'm following the evidence best I can. Sure. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So I don't want to get into a debate. And it's just Q&A. Go ahead.
the last thing would be for both of you. What is that evidence you're speaking of?
Basically, where I'm coming from is consciousness is something that we know exists, and it has explanatory power to explain things that physical things can't necessarily explain. So I would say that I have questions that are unanswered, or maybe they're not totally unanswered, but I haven't found like the guy said, like a satisfactory answer to them. So I would just posit something extra to the universe, which is consciousness, but it could be wrong. So I'm not here to go for it.
Why not just remain agnostic on the question?
I'm both agnostic and I'm thinking about it. So I'm in both camps. I don't know for sure, but I'm theorizing. I'm coming up with something that kind of satisfies me more, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, we can come up with an infinite amount of, would you agree with me that we can come up with an infinite amount of theories that would have explanatory power, at least to our senses, to our understanding, to our cognitive ability?
We can't come up with infinite theories because there's certain things that we can explain and certain things we cannot explain. For instance, I can't say it's dark matter, dark energy, because I'm not even sure what that is, and I can't say, well, this is what I believe it could be in that sense. But I can say consciousness is something we do know exists, so I can put that out there as my explanation as best as I possibly can.
Okay, so, you would agree that at least there's a huge amount of theories that we could put out there.
Excuse me? I didn't catch that. Can you?
You're not agreeing that I asked you if you would agree that we can posit an infinite amount of theories that have explanatory power. You said no.
No,
right?
I don't think. Not an infinite amount, because there's a limit to how much we know. So yeah, I do think, if you're asking me, yeah, we can hypothetically come up with millions of different theories. You're right about that. But what I'm saying is something that makes sense, that's parsimonious, I would say is very limited.
Wait, what? Something that's parsimonious is very limited?
Yeah. Something that can explain things in the current state of like the world that as we know it right now, because like there are things that are outside of our knowledge that could explain it. But what I'm saying is like in the current state of where we're at right now, in the current knowledge we have, it's limited.
Right. Okay.
2 minutes to the half hour mark. When you said explained it, what was it again, Frank?
Explain. What do you mean? I've been saying so much. I don't even know where I'm at.
That's
Explain
okay.
what? What I'm saying. Explain the fundamental of the universe, if that makes sense. Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Go ahead, Blaine. Go ahead,
I'm
Blaine.
just gonna switch off from Frank to Strong, so I don't just attack Frank.
You're mean.
Strong.
You're mean today. I'm just playing.
What is that evidence you're following that leads you to naturalism?
Sure. So naturalism accounts for everything that we know of. Anything that's ever been said to be supernatural has later been found to be natural, or we still don't know yet, but nothing's been shown to be supernatural. Evidence
Sure.
with consciousness would be, we know that consciousness exists now. We don't know of that in the deep past. I would challenge anyone to show that would be the case.
Well, I'm not even talking about
there's certainly evidence of consciousness in humans and other animals. I don't see any evidence of consciousness in trees or other plants. I certainly don't see any evidence of consciousness in rocks, as was claimed.
I agree with you there. The contention I'm having with you, and what I'm going to shock you on, is in your conclusion of naturalism. Is there any possible phenomenon that could happen in our world that we could afterwards analyze and learn the processes of such phenomenon, and then can we, after learning the processes of the phenomenon, can we still claim that phenomenon to be supernatural? For instance, if there's a being, some sort of alien who, maybe he can eat planets. We see him eat Mars. But after a while, maybe this guy is benevolent. He goes to our planet. We study him. He shows us the physical or the mechanics, the physical mechanics, material mechanics that happen for him to do such things, right? Would you still call that supernaturalism? Can you ever identify a new phenomenon from supernaturalism and naturalism? Is my question.
Sure. So even in your scenario, a natural explanation would be more likely. Which is going to be more likely in any scenario? Something that you know exists, such as naturalism, or something that you don't know exists, such as supernaturalism? Obviously, the former.
Or can you just give me like one example of something that you would consider supernatural?
Well, I mean, it's just, people's opinions, but there's like ghosts and spirits and God.
Sure. If we found ghosts today and we studied them and understood them afterwards, after, say, a year of studying them, would you still call it supernatural?
No, I would say somebody's scamming someone, since I don't believe in that. There's going to be some real explanation for it, nothing to do with supernatural.
Right. Well, no. I'm saying that I'm asked, the question is, or imagine a hypothetical world, right? But this world, ghosts exist, and it's just as our planet, except they just found out ghosts exist, right?
Okay.
Under this planet.
Sure. Then I'd be compelled to believe it. I'd have no choice.
Well, what I'm trying to ask is if you could ever differentiate between whenever a new phenomenon happens that you don't understand at all, would you ever call it supernatural?
No. That's a gap argument again. You need real evidence. Like the track record shows everything is...
I'm not making a gap argument. I'm asking if you could differentiate between the supernatural and the natural if a phenomenon occurs that you don't understand.
No, just because you don't understand something, that would be incredulity. You need real evidence. The track record shows that everything's natural. If you're going to buck that track record, you need some real evidence. If real evidence existed, I'd be compelled to believe, but it doesn't, and I'm convinced it never will. But I'd be interested if it ever came to be.
Sure. Could there, because we don't understand the universe, right? We don't know most of the universe. Could the universe contain a certain portion of it that is non-natural? Possibly. Is that a possibility? Does that have a logical contradiction?
Well, in my opinion, it's not the case. Could I be wrong? Yes. Be very unlikely, in my opinion, though. I don't want to.
So sorry to interrupt. It's almost 15 after. So if you guys want to just continue, that's fine. Because we wanted to set Q&A for 30 minutes, so we're a little bit over. I don't mind. It's up to you two.
We could
sure. I'll just make one last statement.
Something real quick, Blink, before you get into it. I wanted to say, I think that we can always posit what T-Jump says a lot, which is future testable predictions. So if there was like a way to like make future testable predictions about the ghost or the phenomena, then maybe it could lead towards us like believing it more than if not. Does that make sense, Strong?
Sure.
Yeah, I would think something like that maybe would satisfy your,
Right. I agree a lot with what Strong Atheist. What's your name? Strong something? Strong?
Yeah.
Strong. I just call you Strong.
Sure.
With most of your view, the only problem is the conclusion. Because you can't ever, it seems like if we ever find something that we would, like before finding such phenomenon, we would consider it supernatural. For instance, if Superman came, right? We would consider Superman in this world supernatural. Yet if he ever appeared, we would stop calling it supernatural. We would just incorporate it into our knowledge and call it natural and understand it, etc.
Well, no,
with the Green Lantern.
Superman would be natural. Like, he came allegedly from the planet Krypton. Nothing supernatural. It is fiction, but that's fine. I understand that it's fiction. I know the difference, but I mean, you can give medicals all day long, but until you actually can come up with something that's supernatural, that's a whole different scenario. I would be skeptical that it could ever occur. I look forward to it ever occurring, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not claiming supernaturalism exists. I never seen any evidence of that. Right? I'm just saying that because you don't have a way to differentiate for an unknown phenomenon, whether it's natural or unnatural, because you would always say any unknown phenomenon that we experience is natural, then it seems like like an illogical way to conclude that everything is purely physical.
Okay, what do you think is not physical?
I don't claim anything to be non-physical. I've never seen anything non-physical. Everything I've seen and experienced is physical.
Okay, that's fine. Then let's concentrate on your supernatural claim to be possible. When we're speaking of supernatural, I mean, I would go along with like a miracle kind of a scenario where something that defies the laws of physics. Okay, I mean, do you have any example of anything that could even be possible?
Yeah, when I say possible, I just mean it is non-contradictory. That's all I mean.
Okay. So, well, I would be really curious if you could ever find any evidence of anything supernatural. There's been large monetary rewards offered for anyone that could. None have ever been able to be claimed.
Yeah, I'm aware. That's
why. Strong question for you. Is information physical?
Yes, everything is physical. Information would be thoughts, which are electrochemical reactions in the brain. Or there's other information like in a computer, which could be accounted for this way.
Okay.
Hey, Blank. So, what's your point? What was your point of? I mean, if you want to break it down.
My point.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
My point is simply that we can't know anything about the metaphysical, or at least I don't have a way to know anything about the metaphysical, anything about the true nature of reality.
But would you say, Blake, would you say it's okay for us to hypothesize, to come up with like theories to explain it?
Yeah. There's like naturalism is a theory, dualism, right? Idealism, is that the same thing? I don't know.
Yeah, idealism.
There's many theories, but we can gather up all the theories we know of, and yet you're like
Are you there?
You wouldn't know if
Blink, you cut out.
If
we could gather up all the theories and then you cut out.
Oh, my bad. Okay. If you could gather up all the theories, well, I'm losing my train of thought. Wait. If you could gather up all a million theories or whatever, that's like pretty much irrelevant, right? Because we are omniscient. We're not omniscient. We don't know everything. We don't know the universe. We don't know all of existence. Until we know all of existence, we can't say for sure that everything is purely physical because we don't know all of existence. We can't say for sure that everything is purely non-physical or a combination of the both, right? Or any other theory.
But would it be possible for us to say maybe 51% is non-physical, the other 49% is what we don't know? Like, could we give a probability?
I can. I can just make up a number, right?
This is a wild ass guess at this point. Do you guys want to return back to the question of the problem with hard consciousness?
I think Strong did a good job of answering that question. And again, I would have to research it more, but I do think it's a problem though, because it would be difficult for us to understand how consciousness arises in Homo sapiens in the way that it does. But I would have to do more research, I think. But maybe Blank has something to say about it. I don't know.
The problem of heart consciousness?
Yeah, have you heard of it, or do you know?
I've heard of it, but can you explain it?
It's like basically how does consciousness arise from humans, and what explains it? Like because basically like interactions in the brain can cause. They say can cause consciousness. Some people say that, but they haven't drilled down exactly what processes there are that causes the consciousness. So it leaves like a gap between what we know and what we think. So.
Well, I think we would all agree. I'm hoping we would all agree that there are physical mechanisms occurring in our body, in our brain, that interact with each other to form consciousness. But the disagreement, I guess, is one of you thinks that plus some extra physical mechanism happening as well.
What connections cause it? What physical connections would cause the consciousness to arise? Because, like, if you compare us to animals, we're different in the sense of how we have self-awareness. Even though not getting into my theory, but like people think that we have self-awareness while animals don't. So, and our ability to process information, but they just don't know how it happens in the brain. So they can't conclude that it actually does arise from the brain. That's why a lot of theists like to think of the soul as something extra that causes our consciousness. But anyway, that's basically what it is.
Wait, some people think that animals don't have consciousness?
Not in the same way we do.
Got it.
Like, we have more awareness, more reasoning power.
Right.
Which I would agree with, by the way. But anyway, yeah, that's basic. If you don't have anything to say about it, that's fine too. You know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It almost sounds like you're saying, Frank, a higher level of consciousness.
Right, basically, yeah. Where,
You
because
still need to you'd still need to define exactly what that is, though.
We can just call it human consciousness, right?
Yeah,
We don't
human
have to
consciousness,
get
that's
very
fine.
technical. The way human consciousness arises,
But
I would just appeal.
It gets to the question of AI as well, where as in like how would consciousness arise in AI, you know? Because if we're not just like machines in motion, then we would have to there would have to be something extra there that would cause us to like have that enlightenment moment. That moment of like, this is who we are, this is awareness, is like, you know, basically, yeah. So whereas an AI or machines would probably not have the same functioning process.
Yeah, I understand. I think there's a common understanding. I might be wrong on this. That humans gain their human consciousness simply through the interactions of the body and the brain, right? Electrical signals that get sent from the brain to the body and back. Maybe other chemicals in there. I don't know the mechanisms, but
yeah, I think
we are.
No, what I was going to say was,
we just.
I think that where it breaks down is like when someone was asking like, what if you like affected like the brain? Would it like cause the consciousness to go away? Which in theory it would. But people say it might not. So that's where there's confusion.
Mm-hmm. You have any thoughts, Strong?
Well, I mean, we just have a bunch of, assertions that you can't back up as far as I'm concerned. I was listening to the percentages that you guys were giving about things that are material and immaterial. How could you know any of these things?
I just made up a number because I don't.
Yeah, I made up a number too.
I know, but that's like not how things work, right? And then I had already the different levels of this earlier. Yep, go ahead.
I don't understand how you can exclude supernaturalism.
Well, I'm looking for evidence. Okay, the track record shows the track record shows 100% natural, or we still don't know yet. So I mean, if you're going to buck the track record, you need some kind of evidence. Do you have any?
Right, I agree with you.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Do you have any?
The only disagreement with my stance on your stance, Strong, is that I understand as well, and I think you should understand that we don't know the universe in its entirety, right? We agree to that?
You're giving another gap argument. It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. Because it's incredulity. Because we don't know something doesn't mean you can fill it in with whatever you want to fill the gap in with.
I'm not. What am I filling it with?
You're saying because we don't know everything, that these things that have no evidence could be the case.
Right, that they're possible. It's a possibility. It's an idea that is non-contradictory.
It doesn't matter. There's no evidence. It's an idea there's no evidence for. Bring forth evidence. You know, anybody can make up anything they want. Until you have real evidence, you have nothing.
Exactly.
That's an empty assertion.
I'm not asserting. The problem is I'm not asserting. I'm not asserting anything. I'm saying I agree with you. We don't have evidence. There's no reason to assert that it's true, but there's also no reason to assert that it's not possible. You are asserting it's not possible.
Strong. I think what he's saying is, like, in our current knowledge, we can't determine whether, like, certain things are a certain way, like whether there is a supernatural or not. But that, like, there could be knowledge outside of what we know that could determine that maybe there is something supernatural, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. Like, what I believe is not supernatural, I think it's all natural. But I would definitely agree, like, maybe there's something out there that we don't know yet that could lead towards us, like, having some sort of supernatural.
Until there's real evidence, it can just be considered an empty assertion. I mean, anybody can say anything they want. You can make up anything right now and just claim that's the case. But until you have something backing it up, what more do you have than an empty assertion?
Here's how I put it. I would put it that we should not take seriously what we don't have evidence for, but we shouldn't completely dismiss it.
Oh, I disagree. I think we can dismiss it until the evidence comes forward, which most likely never will. I'm convinced it never will.
Or I would ask you, have we had discoveries that we previously thought impossible?
Certainly.
Okay, because we've had those discoveries have happened, which is unreasonable to completely 100% dismiss the possibility of an idea that is non-contradictory.
Blink, what Sean is saying is, like, we can rule it out because there's no evidence of it. It hasn't been there's no explanatory power. Same way as I said about my thing, there's no explanatory power, so we can rule it out at that point. But that doesn't mean, like, and this is where me and Strong disagree, that doesn't mean, like, that there can't be something outside of what we know that could explain something extra, that some new feature, because most features have already been explained, but maybe some new feature in the universe that we don't know yet. And I think that could be something that we can, figure out.
Well, I give my position.
Appreciate it, Blank. Anybody else?
This was good. I like this, man. We had a good time.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for everybody attending. If you have any questions, you can direct message Frank or Strong Atheist. Thanks, guys.
Come talk to me.
Also, if anybody wants to, thank you, Victoria and Frank. And you can, if anybody wants to, there's like an after event VC, and we're trying to attempt to build the server back up a little. So if anybody ever, wants to do VC in here, people are sometimes trying to do that.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Strong, you want to close it?
Sure.
All right. Cool.